Imagine a world where the night does not belong to the wolf or the big cat or any mammal at all. Imagine a time, not so distant in the grand scale of Earth's history, when the setting sun signaled the rise of a different kind of ruler. This was a world where silk was the law, and the architects of this silent, suffocating empire were not building cities, but weaving entire landscapes into traps of breathtaking scale and deadliness. This is not a fantasy, nor a fever dream from the depths of the Carboniferous. This is a story written in the fossilized remnants of a rainforest that existed just a few million years ago. A story that reveals a time when spiders did not just live in the world, they dominated it, transforming entire ecosystems into their own web-draped domains, leaving behind villages of the dead, lost to a night of silk and venom. If you are drawn to these lost chapters of our planet, to the times when the natural order was fundamentally different from anything we can imagine today, then you have found your home. Subscribe and ring the bell because we are about to pull back the curtain on a prehistoric world more strange and terrifying than any fiction. The evidence for this silent arachnid empire was not found in a dramatic cliff face or a barren desert, but hidden within the gentle rolling hills of what is now central France. Here the Earth holds a secret, a snapshot of a world that existed 16 million years in the past, preserved with such impossible clarity that it feels less like geology and more like sorcery. The evidence for this silent arachnid empire was not found in a dramatic cliff face or a barren desert, but hidden within the gentle rolling hills of what is now central France. Here the Earth holds a secret, a snapshot of a world that existed 16 million years in the past, preserved with such impossible clarity that it feels less like geology and more like sorcery. The site of Écreux is not a typical fossil bed of compressed bones and petrified wood. It is a diatomite deposit, a fine pale powder composed of the microscopic glass skeletons of countless diatoms that once bloomed in a vast ancient lake. This silicious ooze was nature's perfect preservative, a substance so fine and chemically inert that it could capture the most delicate of structures, entombing them in perfect detail before they could even begin to decay. It was in this powdery matrix that paleontologists began to find something unprecedented, something that should have vanished without a trace. Not just the leaves and insects of a Miocene rainforest, but the ghosts of the spiders themselves, and the monumental structures they built. The first clues were not the spiders, but their architecture. The diatomite was etched with vast sprawling patterns of silk, fossilized web systems of a scale that defied belief. These were not the orderly orb webs of a common garden spider, but dense, chaotic, three-dimensional tapestries, a labyrinth of threads that would have enveloped entire sections of the understory. The fossilized silk, transformed over millennia into a thin film of carbon, painted a picture of an environment so saturated with webs that moving through it would have been like navigating a series of sticky, invisible rooms. But the true scale of this phenomenon only became clear when the researchers looked beyond individual webs and began to map the entire fossil layer. They realized they were not looking at a few isolated snares. They were looking at a collective effort, a landscape-scale phenomenon where multiple spider species, thousands upon thousands of individuals, had spun their webs in such close proximity that they created a continuous, interconnected mat of silk that blanketed the forest floor, the low-lying vegetation, and the spaces between trees. This was not a collection of individual homes. It was a sprawling, silent metropolis built entirely of trap lines and anchor threads, a city of silk. And within this sticky metropolis, the architects were preserved in stunning detail. The diatomite yielded not just one or two spider fossils, but a staggering diversity, from tiny money spiders to formidable hunters, all caught in the act of their daily lives, frozen in the very substance that both defined and entombed them. But the most chilling finds were the mass assemblages, the villages lost to the night hinted at in the title. In certain areas of the deposit, The fossils revealed catastrophic events, likely sudden storms or ash falls from distant volcanic eruptions that had smothered the entire forest ecosystem in a single devastating moment. In these layers, the density of spider fossils skyrocketed, creating paleontological mass graves where individuals of numerous species were found clustered together, their silken city having become their collective tomb. These were not just random collections of dead spiders. These were intact communities, a preserved cross-section of an entire arachnid society that had thrived in this lost rainforest, wiped out in an instant and preserved for eternity. The stage was set, the players were in place, and the fossil record had provided a crime scene of unparalleled detail. The question was no longer if spiders dominated this world, but how they achieved such breathtaking supremacy, and what kind of evolutionary arms race could have led to the creation of such a terrifying web-choked world. The sheer density of these silk-bound communities pointed to an environment overflowing with prey, a world where the conditions were so perfect for the spider's reign that their numbers could explode to almost unimaginable levels. But to understand what fueled this empire of silk, we must look past the weavers themselves and into the tangled, humid air of the Miocene rainforest, where a different, quieter revolution was taking place among the leaves, a revolution that would provide the endless food source for this eight-legged dynasty. The sheer density of these silk-bound communities pointed to an environment overflowing with prey, a world where the conditions were so perfect for the spider's reign that their numbers could explode to almost unimaginable levels. But to understand what fueled this empire of silk, we must look past the weavers themselves and into the tangled, humid air of the Miocene rainforest where a different, quieter revolution was taking place among the leaves, a revolution that would provide the endless food source for this eight-legged dynasty. The Miocene epoch was a time of profound climatic change, a global shift that saw the expansion of grasslands and the contraction of forests. But it was also a golden age for a specific and extraordinarily prolific group of insects, the dipterans, the true flies. While the dinosaurs were a distant memory, the ecological niches they left vacant were being fiercely contested by mammals and birds. But it was the flies that were undergoing an explosion of diversity and abundance on a scale never seen before or since. The fossil site of Écreux tells this story not in grand skeletons but in a constant fine rain of tiny wings and segmented bodies, a blizzard of life preserved in the diatomite. The numbers are staggering. In the same layers that contain the dense spider communities, fossils of flies outnumber all other insects combined. Gnats, midges, mosquitoes, and a host of other small, fragile dipterans filled the air in thick, swirling clouds. They clustered around the ancient lake, rose in mist from the damp forest floor, and swarmed in the humid air beneath the canopy. This was not merely an abundance of prey. This was a perpetual, self-renewing resource, a constant living rainfall of protein. For the spiders, this was a world of limitless opportunity. The evolutionary pressure was not on finding food, but on developing more and more efficient ways to harvest it from the air. This is the fundamental reason the webs at Écreux grew to such insane densities. The spiders were not competing for scarce resources. They were capitalizing on an unprecedented surplus. Every new thread, every additional square centimeter of sticky silk represented a greater share of this aerial bounty. The forest was not a place of scarcity, but a biological marketplace overflowing with wealth. And the spiders were the master traders, dealing in threads and traps. This fly-rich environment did more than just allow spider populations to boom. It fundamentally reshaped their evolutionary trajectory and their very behavior. With food available in such absurd quantities, the risks of leaving the safety of a web to hunt actively far outweighed the rewards. Why expend the energy and face the danger of roaming when a feast could simply fall into your lap, or rather, into your meticulously constructed silken net? This led to a powerful evolutionary push towards web building as the dominant survival strategy. It fostered a shift towards sociality, or at least tolerance. The traditional image of the solitary, cannibalistic spider begins to break down in a world where a gnat is never more than a wing beat away. While not truly social in the way of ants or bees, the spiders of Écreux could afford to live in closer proximity, their individual webs tessellating into a collective hunting ground without the immediate trigger of starvation-driven cannibalism. They had become farmers of the air, and the flies were their crop. But this kingdom, built on a foundation of endless flies, was itself built upon another, even more ancient and silent revolution happening under their very feet. A revolution rooted not in the air, but in the earth itself. A change that would transform the entire planet and set the stage for this unique moment in time. This explosion of fly life, which in turn fueled the spider empire, was not a random event. It was the direct result of a deeper, global transformation that was reshaping continents and rewriting the rules of life itself. The key to understanding this lush, lost world lies not in the air, but in the very soil upon which this rainforest grew, and in the new forms of life that were only just beginning to conquer the land. This explosion of fly life, which in turn fueled the spider empire, was not a random event. It was the direct result of a deeper global transformation that was reshaping continents and rewriting the rules of life itself. The key to understanding this lush, lost world lies not in the air, but in the very soil upon which this rainforest grew, and in the new forms of life that were only just beginning to conquer the land. The Miocene epoch was the stage for one of the most significant biological revolutions in Earth's history, the rise of the grasses. This humble, unassuming family of plants was engaged in a silent war, a chemical arms race that would change the face of the planet. As grasses spread, they incorporated tiny particles of silica, called phytoliths, into their leaves, a defense against the jaws of herbivores. When these tough, abrasive leaves died and fell, they created a new kind of soil, one that was richer, more stable, and more conducive to the growth of vast root systems. This grassy revolution was creating a new world on the edges of the forests, a world of open savannas and meadows that would eventually pave the way for the age of grazing mammals. But its first and most profound impact was felt in the world of detritus, in the dark, teeming universe of the decomposers, and here, in the damp, leafy litter of the forest floor, another dynasty was rising to power. A dynasty whose waste would become the fuel for the spider kingdom. The flies that swarmed in such incredible numbers at Écreux were not all blood feeders or nectar sippers. A vast number of them were the children of decay, the larvae of fungus gnats, scavenger flies and other species whose lives were inextricably linked to death and decomposition. The grassy revolution, with its constant production of tough, silica-rich plant matter, created a monumental and continuous food source for the fungi and microorganisms that break down cellulose. This in turn created a paradise for the insects that fed on this rotting, fungal-rich material. The forest floor and the soils of the expanding grasslands became a factory for fly larvae, a subterranean nursery producing countless new adults every day to take to the wing. The spiders, in their silken towers, were merely the beneficiaries of this economic boom happening in the underworld. They were the apex predators in a food chain that was founded on decay, a food chain supercharged by the relentless, global spread of grass. This intricate web of life, from grass to decomposer to fly to spider, created a period of unprecedented stability and abundance for the arachnid rulers of Écreux. Their world was a perfect self-reinforcing loop. The more the grasses spread and enriched the soil, the more flies were produced. The more flies filled the air, the more successful the web-building spiders became. And the more spiders there were, the more they kept the exploding fly populations in check, preventing them from swarming out of all control. It was a golden age, a rare moment of ecological equilibrium where one group of predators had achieved a level of dominance seldom seen in the fossil record. They were the undisputed masters of their world, their reign built on a foundation of grass and decay. But this perfect balance was also a precarious one, an empire built in a greenhouse world. For the same climatic conditions that fostered this lush, fly-filled paradise were also its greatest vulnerability. The stability that allowed the spiders to flourish was about to be shattered, not by a predator, but by a slow, creeping change in the very climate that had nurtured them, a change that would bring this age of silk to a sudden and dramatic close. The reign of the spiders was a masterpiece of ecological timing, a perfect alignment of climate, flora, and fauna. But Earth's climate is a pendulum, and the forces that had pushed it towards a warm, humid greenhouse were already beginning to pull it back. A slow cooling was on the horizon, a gradual change that would dismantle this intricate world thread by thread, leaving the spider villages to be frozen in time, waiting in the stone for millions of years to tell their story. The reign of the spiders was a masterpiece of ecological timing, a perfect alignment of climate, flora, and fauna. But Earth's climate is a pendulum, and the forces that had pushed it towards a warm, humid greenhouse were already beginning to pull it back. A slow cooling was on the horizon, a gradual change that would dismantle this intricate world thread by thread, leaving the spider villages to be frozen in time, waiting in the stone for millions of years to tell their story. The end of this arachnid golden age did not come with a bang, not with a volcanic super-eruption or a crashing asteroid, but with a whisper, a slow, relentless drop in global temperatures that would culminate in the ice ages. This cooling began to rearrange the world's biomes like pieces on a chessboard. The lush subtropical rainforests of central France, the very heart of the spider empire, began to contract. Their borders receded southward, replaced by cooler, drier woodlands and the expanding grasslands whose earlier rise had, ironically, helped fuel the spider boom. The world was becoming seasonal, with colder winters and less overall humidity, and this new rhythm of life was incompatible with the delicate, energy-intensive economy of silk. The impact on the spider metropolis was slow, insidious, and inescapable. The first and most critical blow was to the foundation of their food web. The cool, drier conditions slowed decomposition. The frantic activity of the forest floor, that factory of fly larvae, began to sputter. With less decay, there were fewer fungal blooms, and with fewer fungi, there was less food for the legions of flies. The constant, living rainfall of insects that had filled the Miocene air began to diminish, thinning out from a blizzard to a drizzle. For the spiders, this was an economic collapse. Their sprawling, energy-intensive webs, which had been profitable in a world of plenty, became a liability. Maintaining vast, sticky tapestries requires a constant intake of protein to produce silk, and now that investment was no longer paying off. A web that once caught a dozen gnats a day might now catch one. The strategy of passive hunting, of building a silken fortress and waiting for food to arrive, was failing. The age of the specialist web builder was ending. This environmental shift triggered a dramatic restructuring of the ecosystem, a silent, slow-motion revolution that saw the fall of one dynasty and the rise of another. As the web-building spiders declined, their numbers thinning along with their prey, a different kind of arachnid began to come to the fore, the active hunters. Wolf spiders, ground spiders, and other cursorial species that roam the land in search of prey, expending energy only when necessary, were far better suited to a world of scarce and scattered resources. They did not need to invest in costly, fixed assets of silk that could yield no return. They could adapt, move, and pursue. The ecological pendulum was swinging away from the sedentary architects and towards the nomadic wanderers. The very landscape began to change. The dense, continuous mat of silk that had once draped the understory became tattered and disconnected, then vanished altogether. The silent, sticky cities of Écreux were abandoned, not by choice, but by necessity. Their architects unable to sustain their grand designs in a world that was growing colder, drier, and hungrier. Their reign was over. Their golden age preserved only in the exceptional tomb of the diatomite, a final, perfect snapshot of a world that was already passing away. The fossilized villages of Écreux are more than just a collection of ancient spiders. They are a poignant monument to a lost world, a testament to a time when conditions aligned to allow one form of life to achieve a breathtaking and ultimately fleeting dominance. They show us that the natural world is not static, but a fluid, ever-changing stage where today's ruler can be tomorrow's relic. And this lesson from the deep past echoes into our present, forcing us to look at the world around us with new eyes, to see the invisible empires that might be thriving right under our noses. The fossilized villages of Écreux are more than just a collection of ancient spiders. They are a poignant monument to a lost world, a testament to a time when conditions aligned to allow one form of life to achieve a breathtaking and ultimately fleeting dominance. They show us that the natural world is not static but a fluid, ever-changing stage where today's ruler can be tomorrow's relic. And this lesson from the deep past echoes into our present, forcing us to look at the world around us with new eyes, to see the invisible empires that might be thriving right under our noses. The delicate carbon films of silk and the perfectly preserved carapaces in the French diatomite represent one of paleontology's rarest treasures, a behavioral fossil. They preserve not just anatomy, but action. Not just bodies, but the very structures these creatures built, offering us a window into the daily rhythm of an ecosystem that vanished millions of years before humans walked the earth. These spiders, in their death, achieved a form of immortality, their silent communities becoming a time capsule that would one day speak volumes about the fragility and transience of ecological power. What makes Écreux so profoundly important is that it captures a specific, almost magical moment in evolutionary time, a peak, a golden age that would never come again in quite the same way. It represents a set of environmental conditions so perfect for web-building spiders that they essentially took over the understory ecosystem, achieving a density and diversity that is almost unimaginable in today's world. This was not the default state of nature, but a temporary, glorious anomaly made possible by a unique convergence of climate, flora, and fauna. The subsequent cooling of the planet, the expansion of grasslands, and the change in insect populations meant that this particular balance could never be recreated. The world moved on, and the age of the spider metropolis passed into history, surviving only as ghostly impressions in stone. These fossils are therefore not just evidence of what was, but a reminder of what could have been, a road not taken in the history of life on our planet. This story resonates with a deep and unsettling truth about our own time. We are living through another period of dramatic global change, another swing of the ecological pendulum. This one driven not by gradual geological processes, but by human activity. The spider empires of the Miocene were undone by cooling. Today, ecosystems are being transformed by warming, by habitat fragmentation, by the rapid movement of species across the globe. The lesson of Écreux is that no ecological order, no matter how dominant or well-established, is permanent. The rulers of today, be they a particular group of insects, a family of mammals, or even a species of primate, are not guaranteed their position tomorrow. The fossil record is littered with the ghosts of once successful dynasties that failed to adapt to a changing world. The villages lost to the night of spiders stand as a silent warning from the deep past, reminding us that the natural world is in a constant state of flux, and that our own reign, like that of the spiders, is contingent on the stability of the systems we often take for granted, and so the legacy of these ancient spiders extends far beyond their silken tombs. They challenge us to see the world not as a fixed backdrop, but as a dynamic, ever-shifting stage. They teach us that understanding the past is not merely an academic exercise, but a crucial tool for comprehending the potential futures that await our planet. The night of the spiders may have ended, but their story, preserved in the stone of Écreux, continues to echo through the ages, a haunting and beautiful testament to the rise and fall of empires we never knew existed. And if you want to witness the shocking reality of a spider that defied this evolutionary shift and became a master of ambush on a truly terrifying scale. A predator that turns the tables on the animal kingdom in a way that must be seen to be believed. Then your next journey awaits. We explore the evidence and the myths surrounding a creature of pure instinct and power in our investigation. The giant spider that eats birds. Evolution gone too far? The story of life's extremes continues, from the silent villages of the past to the stunning predators of the present.